So hi guys, welcome to Crazy Burger. Today we're going to be looking at the Gameforce CHI. Is it any good? Let's find out. So this is the Gameforce CHI, and this is the little box that the unit comes in. But without further ado, the company I actually purchased it from is this company, Droix, and I've bought a few handhelds from them before in the UK, and they are absolutely fantastic. Quality and service is absolutely brilliant. Cannot recommend them enough. I'll leave a link in the description for this company and where to buy from. So without further ado, let's have a look at this. So this comes in a lovely little package, and surprisingly it actually comes complete with a carry case as well. Now this is pretty much unknown or unheard of with most of these handhelds that you get. I'm not really liking the colour too much, but it's still really cool that it's actually a custom fit case for this unit. Now if you open it up, you're greeted with the console. There is a sort of little charge cable, a USB-C charge cable in here, which is quite cool, so we'll keep that tucked away. You also got a sort of little cloth to clean the screen and a instruction manual. Quite important, there's some shortcuts that we'll go into later that's quite important to keep, and it's already tucked away in this little packet. I think that's quite cool that they actually include that in the package. It's absolutely fantastic. And this is the actual unit. Now the first thing you look at it, you think, oh wow, it's orange, which is fair enough. I mean, it actually comes in 3 colours. It comes in a green and a slightly cream grey colour, which I'll leave sort of pictures in the video. I don't think any of them are particularly attractive, to be honest. I mean, I think maybe that's the point of them. They're all very in your face, and it obviously stands out from the crowd. I guess that's the point that they're trying to do, which is fine. I'll go with that. So guys, depending where you've actually purchased this from, and you may have to purchase yourself a memory card of whatever size, 64 gig or whatever. I'd recommend that a sort of larger size, but this, from Droix anyway, I got a 64-bit memory card included, and it's already been flashed with emulation software. Now I believe that's not actually the same with every company you'll buy this with. Generally you'll just get the unit, and you'll have to purchase a memory card and go on to emulate and flash the image onto a memory card so that you can get started and then drop all your ROMs. If that's the case, I'll leave a link in the description where to get the emulate software from. But for me, thank you Droix, it's already been flashed onto this memory card. All I had to do was drop a few ROMs on, which is fine. So I dropped some of the ROMs from some of the other consoles that I've bought, and it's really much the same, and they all work fantastically well so far. So let's have a little look at the unit in more detail. So here we got a few different things. We've got 2 dual thumbsticks, and they're alright, nothing special. They're quite small. Not really a lot of grip to them, unfortunately. There's no sort of L3 and R3 click-in buttons, which is a little bit disappointing. You've got your D-pad. Now the D-pad and the sort of BA and XY buttons are kind of a quite soft feeling. I mean, they're all plastic right enough, but when you sort of look at them, there's a lot of movement in them. And actually when you're playing the games, it feels a little strange. Same goes for these function 1 and 2 buttons. And your select and start button, there's sort of similar feel. The only one that's slightly different here is the home button, or it's like a hotkey button rather than a home button, and it has a kind of clicky feel to it. This button isn't really a home button as such. You don't press it and you go back to home. It's like a hotkey for changing brightness, volume, save states and stuff, but I'll go into that in more detail in the video. So usually you hold that down, press another button, it takes you to like retro art, for example, pressing home key and X. If you want to change the volume, it's like left and right, hold that down, left, right, up and down, and it varies a little bit depending on what part of the actual system you are in. Now on the bottom here you've got your headphone socket and your USB-C charging cable, and this little thing here is a reset, which I've not had to use. I think if you are flashing the emulate for the first time, you have to use that to reset the system once, and then that's it. And then on the top you've got your L2 and R2 buttons and L1 and R1 buttons, which are a little bit strange. It reminds me a little bit of the old Droid Go Super. And you've got these sort of strange jutty things. I don't know whether it's to help it sit nice like that on a table. I'm not really sure. But it feels weird. It feels like almost they should be buttons. I reckon the trigger buttons might be better if they were here rather than up here. It feels more natural to hold your sort of fingers sort of in this position here, and these would be the buttons. So a little bit of a strange one. And you've got your on-off button at the top here, which is fine. You hold down to turn it on. Generally, if you turn it off, you would use the options in the actual emulate rather than holding this down, but usually you hold it once and it just puts it into a kind of standby mode. One point I want to make is charging was a bit strange. I was charging the unit last night and it would only charge if the device was actually on. I don't really know what that's all about. If I turned it off, it wasn't charging. So a little bit strange. Not sure if that's a flaw in my device or that is how it actually charges. Hope not. It's a bit strange. I mean, it did charge fairly quickly. It only took a couple of hours to get a full sort of charge, so that's fair enough. And that's really it with all the sort of design. So let's have a look how it actually compares to some of the other units that are out there. We've got the Retroid Pocket 2, the Anbernic RG351P, the Droid Go Super, and the Gameforce CHI. Now, they all, I think obviously you can see the colour-wise, this one sticks out by a long way to the other units, and obviously you can see that the Droid Go Super is by far the largest and has the largest screen, which is quite fair enough, but it's kind of got a sort of slightly cheap feel to it, but it does play the games really well. You've got the Retroid Pocket 2, which is probably the most comparable unit by size and screen to the Gameforce CHI, and performance as well. It's very similar to this, and you can see it's pretty similar. And probably one of the best units out of the lot here is the RG351P. It's not perfect right enough. It probably plays all the games really well, especially on the Arcos operating system, which hopefully I believe that the Gameforce CHI might have an option to move to that at some point, which would be good because I think performance wise, especially for your Dreamcast and some of the others, like N64, is generally better on Arcos. But yeah, see, the RG351P looks a little bit smaller and it has a different screen ratio to like a 3:2 rather than this sort of 4:3. Before I sort of jump into the actual unit, having a quick look at the manual, and it is actually quite important to have a look at the manual. It's obviously partly in Chinese, but there are some there is some information here that helps. Here are the actual stats of the unit. I'm not sure if you can actually see that though. It's the usual Rockchip RK3326, which is pretty much what's running in a lot of these devices. Quad core A35 up to 1.5 gigahertz. It's got 1 gig of memory. It's got 3.45 inch screen, 640 by 480 sort of resolution, which is quite cool. That's sort of better than the RG351P. And sort of charging time about 3 hours, which is probably right. That took about 2 to 3 hours. Playtime 68 hours, fair enough. It's got Wi-Fi built in, which is really good. You can sort of use that to download games quickly over PC and do some updates and stuff. And that's it. And there's some quite interesting points here in the hotkey information and what some of the buttons do. So definitely something to sort of keep an eye on. Without further ado, let's get stuck into looking at some of the games it can actually run. So once you finally sort of boot up, it might take a few seconds to update whatever games. I've only added, let's see, I've got 76 games. I've not added a lot just yet, just some for sort of video purposes. And so far I've got, I do like this sort of style here. I've got some arcade games, Atari Lynx, Commodore 64, Commodore Amiga, sort of Doom ports and television, PC Engine, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance, and different ports, which is just the general stuff that you usually see here. Now the ports, you still need even though the information is there, you still need your ROMs to be able to get this to work properly. Thomas Wave, Sega Mega Drive, Sega 32X, Sega Mega CD, Dreamcast, PlayStation, PSP, and that's all I've got at the moment. Now, generally, this is pretty much the same as every other handheld device. That your Dreamcast, N64 and PSP, some might play well, some might not. So it's a little bit of a mix. But generally your Mega Drive, NES, Super NES, they all play really well. Now, something I obviously want to point out here is maybe some of the settings. To go into the settings, you press the select. So you've got different start. You want to restart and reboot your system, you can do that. Want to go into sort of the games and sort of ROMs settings, you've got different options here. I don't know if you can actually see that on the screen. It's actually quite difficult to see. You can actually change the button LED colour, which I think is kind of cool. You can see it sort of lights up. This is actually quite cool for playing in the dark, I guess. That's what it's for. I quite like the green, which actually I think looked quite smart, highlighting that. It looked quite cool if you're playing in bed, maybe at night. But obviously during the day it's a little bit off-putting, and it's probably better sticking to off. There is another option here for the status LED, which is this one right here, which you can keep on, off, or on sort of heartbeat mode. I don't really see the point. I find it completely distraction. This LED button over here is actually the charge button, and it'll just flash red when you're charging. And you've got your sort of dual speakers on the front here, which I probably forgot to mention. Now, other sort of things is Bluetooth, and your usual things. If you've not sort of seen this, you can update your games list. You can sort of scrape information from, if you look down here, you can scrape from Screen Scraper to sort of get your box art, which is quite cool. You can do updates, but you need to obviously set your Wi-Fi settings. Now, sound settings is quite important. This in here, you've got the sound sort of to put the device up. Now, I couldn't get the actual hotkey shortkeys to actually work unless it was actually in a game. And other things quite important is probably the brightness. Oh yeah, so the brightness is in system settings. It's up to 100%, but when I started it really was quite low. And there's supposed to be a hotkey to change it, but I found that it's a little bit all over the place when it decides it wants to work or not. Generally, I think it seems to work better in the games or in certain settings. It's a little bit strange. Anyway, let's jump into a game. You'll give you an idea how it goes. Just sort of before we go into the game, I want to show you some of the settings that I would definitely recommend. So game settings. So probably what I noticed is some of the games do look a little bit washed out. So you may have to mess about with some of the options here. I've chosen this shader set, which I find quite useful. It sort of helps the graphics a little bit sharper, because sometimes they feel a bit sort of blurry and not the greatest. But this is sharp bilinear times 2 prescale. A quick tip: if you want to save state, you hold the hotkey and you press this R1 button or R2 button up here, and if you want to load, it's the other side, which is quite cool. So I'll just give you a quick example. It just sort of saved my state. And to up the sound, I believe you hold that down, or that changes the save state. So if you press up and down in the button here, it puts the sounds up and down. And that hotkey works. The brightness, I couldn't figure out which one it was. It didn't seem to correlate to anything in the manual. I do feel that the buttons are definitely quite mushy. I'm not sure that's a good thing. And they're responsive enough, but I just feel as if I need to press them a lot harder than I really should be. And as you see, the game emulates extremely well. It looks fine. I think something that seems apparent to me, that it does seem just that little bit washed out, and I've seen that in pretty much every game I've played. It's maybe not quite as colourful as it should be. So there is actually another screen here. I mean, the screen viewing angles are okay, but there is a screen above the actual LED screen, which is really a bit strange. I don't really get that. So there's obviously possibility of getting sort of dust and things underneath there. Not a massive distraction right now, but just at a sort of point to sort of make here. You see, the Mega Drive sounds, plays absolutely perfect. So to jump out the games, press the hotkey button again and press the start button twice and it'll jump straight back out. So maybe another quick sort of hot tip here is maybe to access the RetroArch, you press the hotkey button again. See, obviously RetroArch is running in the background. So you want to access RetroArch, you sort of hold the hotkey and press X, and you can go in and sort of mess about with the options in here as well. So change your scaling perhaps and the screen resolutions, and perhaps even some of the control methods to your liking. But really, that's it. Everything's in there. If you want to mess about that or not bother with it, that's really up to you. Some of the sort of controls on this is needing a little bit of map. It doesn't seem to really sort of map it. Ideally you want your direction shootings to be on the buttons here, but you sort of need to remember it's a sort of Mega Drive game. But absolutely fantastic game though. Oh yeah, so the number 2 button actually sets the frame rate. See, you got the 60 frames per second here, which is really cool. I'm not sure what number 1 button does. I need to check the instruction manual again, but I felt there's a little bit, they don't really work as some of the manual says they do. So let's have a quick look at Sega 32X. Pretty much uses the same emulator, so it generally won't have a problem playing these. You can see it looks really nice. You can see I still think it has a slight washed out feeling. Maybe it's just me, but I mean it looks fine. I just can't help thinking it could look a little bit brighter and some more colourful. You see the emulation is really good though. I mean the games play fantastically well on Mega Drive and 32X so far. So sort of going in and out the menus is just A and B to go back and A to choose your options. You've got some shortcuts down below that you can sort of make your favourites and stuff, whatever games you want. And each game does have other individual menus and settings you can sort of mess about with. You maybe want to set a different emulator to run. But let's have a quick look at Sega Mega CD. You can see it absolutely sounds spot on. I mean the sound on this device is really good. I mean, but here's kind of another example. It does look a little bit washed out to me. I may be imagining things, but it's just how it feels. I've played this in other devices and it definitely pops a little bit more. Nothing really wrong with it, I suppose. Plays really well, there's no slowdown. And I think this retro handheld market is a little bit sort of full of so many different variants and they all tend to play very similar. So it's really all about what you want from your handheld, what games you want to play, what support sort of the handhelds have. If you like this sort of green and sort of orange style, then this one might be for you. I actually do, I know this looks quite ugly and it's green, but I actually quite like it. The buttons are a little bit mushy. You certainly feel as if you need to press them a little bit sort of longer and harder, but it really plays well. I mean, I can't really sort of complain too much. I have noticed that sometimes the device does crash on me, and I'm not sure if that's just the memory card that was supplied or the device itself, but definitely something to look out to. Maybe it'd be better using a proper memory card from SanDisk or Samsung, for example. But fantastic game. The emulation for these so far is particularly good. So these are the slightly easier things to emulate though. So maybe let's have a look at something a little bit trickier to emulate, like Dreamcast. I've only got a couple of games here now. Soul Calibur is one of my favourite games and its performance can be a little bit all over the place in some other devices. Like the Retroid Pocket 2 for instance, had a lot of flickering in the background and it just was absolutely off-putting, but some of the other devices like the RG351 played this extremely well. especially on the Arcos, but on Emulate there's maybe a little bit of stuttering with the music, and that's generally what I've found so far, is that there's some issues with sort of playing the music. You can see there's a little bit of stuttering there, but I've seen that pretty much standard on every sort of device. You see there's no flickering here, so that's really good. Let's have a look how the game plays. I think you're going to have a lot of mixed results with Dreamcast. Some games will play well and some will probably stutter a little bit. You see there's a little bit of slowdown there. And it still looks really good, and it does look good, but it's a little bit of slowdown. It's probably not quite playing at 60 frames per second. Let's have a look. I can't really put that up just yet, but it's definitely playing about half the frame rate with the sounds of it. But it's definitely not off-putting. It's playable. It's not completely fast and fluid right enough like some other devices, but it's alright. It's actually okay. There's no flickering with the graphics or anything, so it's actually alright. I think it's going to have mixed results on different sort of devices, different games, sorry. Let's have a look at MSR, Metropolis Street Racer. So sort of an example here, I'm playing Metropolis Street Racer on Dreamcast, and the hotkeys to change the sort of sound up and down and brightness, they don't work. So not sure what that's all about. It seems to be hit and miss depending on what game and what emulator you're actually playing. You can see it sounds okay and it looks really good. The button mapping's a bit strange right enough. Your sort of triggers up here or the R2 button. You see it sounds alright. It's not awful. Definitely a little bit of slowdown when you hear the music playing. But at least it's playing. I've sort of played other versions and they won't play the music at all when you're sort of in this sort of part of the game. So that's obviously a bonus. It's definitely not bad. Just to say, this is definitely one of my favourite racing games of all time. It's difficult to control on this device, I'd say though. You might want to sort of mess about in RetroArch, changing the sort of button mapping, I guess. Yeah, you can see there's definitely a lot of slowdown in the music. But the game seems okay. I mean, it seems fluid and fast enough. You can turn off the music if it's that off-putting right enough. I guess for me it was all part of the experience, listening to the in-car radios. If you're looking to play Dreamcast, I'm not sure this is the best way of doing it. Okay, just something sort of quickly to choose on. You can obviously change which emulator that you use. It depends. I mean, I haven't been using this one, and you do get different results depending on which one you use. You may have to experiment, and you may get better results, but you may get worse results. I've found most of them it's fine, just leave it to auto. But for instance, some of the arcade games you might want to change to the different sort of emulators, and there's a lot. There's MAME and there's FB Neo. So you might need to look at that. Some games won't run until you actually choose the correct emulator. So don't get frustrated if a game doesn't work. If it's in the arcade, for instance, just change the emulator and you'll find that it might run better or run at all. Same with N64, I found that there's a few different options and games tend to have different results depending on what one you actually choose from. And let's go back, let's have a look at PlayStation. So let's have a look at Tekken 3. Now generally PlayStation games emulate extremely well on most devices that I've played. I've never really come across too many issues at all. Obviously, if you want to add a lot of ROMs in your own games, then you really want to get the largest possible memory card that you can. You can see it looks really good. Again, I just feel that the colours are just a little washed out, but it sounds fantastic. Well, that was easy. Strange how you can have one round that's really tough and another round that's laughably easy. Let's quickly move on to PSP. I've only got one game and this game generally runs okay. Now you're going to have the same results similar to Dreamcast, I guess. Some games will work well, some won't. Which I guess like God of War, for example, is most likely going to struggle like crazy on this. I think generally the only way of playing sort of PSP games is probably better on the PSP original or on the PS Vita. The PS Vita plays them absolutely flawlessly. So if that is your thing, then I would highly recommend the PS Vita over sort of any emulation device that's out there. This is a sort of quirky, cool little game. You sort of need to sort of change the screen to make your character roll, which is kind of cool. I think depending on what kind of mood you're in, it's got that kind of relaxing feel to it, which I quite like. Anything what I like about it is massively different to anything out there, isn't it? Strange little game, but pretty cool. Anyway, you see it plays really well. And like I said, I'm not sure that every PSP game is going to work for you. I wouldn't probably bother with God of War. So what else can we play? Okay, arcade games. And again, like I said, you may need to change the emulator depending on which game you're actually running. So it can be a little bit hit and miss, but don't get frustrated if it doesn't work. Probably I would recommend looking at which emulator it's using and changing that till it does work. Like for instance, this game doesn't work on the standard MAME sort of emulator, but it does work on FB Neo. This is World Rally. You see it sounds and looks fantastic. Yep. I can't really moan too much about the colours in this sort of version because it does have that type of washed out feeling in the game anyway. This game handles and plays fantastic. Really love it. It's very addictive. I was doing so well. I think generally you'll find the arcade games will probably work okay. So this is Biomechanical Toy. Which is a really cool game. So I can use the D-pad or the analog stick as well. Should maybe mention that. Depends how the game's sort of set up. You may have to change that in the RetroArch settings. Some games map better than others. You see, absolutely fantastic little game. So Atari Lynx games, let's have a quick sort of look at California games and how this emulates. I think one of the plus points is a lot of these games using this 4:3 ratio, it definitely helps with a lot of these retro games and they pretty much fill the screen. And you don't get like any stretched issues when you're sort of using a larger screen or even a smaller screen like the RG351P. Look, I like how cool you can sort of change the style or the sort of layout. That's cool. So what one will I try? Badly. Let's try surfing. You can see it actually looks really nice. A tricky game to play though. Oh damn, I wiped out. So you see, that's pretty cool. Absolutely no problems at all. Commodore 64. Let's have a look. I found this to actually be really good. Obviously not a lot of people will be sort of buying these devices to play sort of Commodore games, or Amiga for example, but the emulation is actually really good. For example, let's have a look at this. Is called .cosmos, which I've featured before on the channel. It's a fairly newish game, and the loading time is pretty quick too, so it loads in the screen as per normal. It takes maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. It may vary depending on what game you're playing, of course. .cosmos, it only took maybe 30-40 seconds to load, which is pretty good for a Commodore 64 game. Button mapping's a little bit strange, right enough. I need to push up to jump rather than pressing sort of the fire button, but you can change that in the options, it's not a problem. Really cool game this, and it's fairly new. I love the sort of style and how it changes, it's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. This is Dizzy, the Prince of the Yoke Folk. So loading styles may vary depending on what game you've got. You might be treated with this sort of loading screen for a little bit, but it's quite a quick emulator, and it's obviously a lot faster than playing a tape. Again, you want to sort of choose your keyboard. You just press the select button and it will bring up the sort of keyboard. This is probably what I would have loved to have seen on Evercade, but so we got the NES versions. I'm not really sure whether they're better or not, and I think I'm just traditional. I really love these versions. And we obviously did get this on the Evercade, but it was obviously under a different name. I don't know, it was Dizzy the Adventurer or something, but it's confusing as heck when these are the original versions we got and they changed the naming sort of convention for the NES, which is just odd. Okay, so Commodore 64 works really well. Let's have a look at Commodore Amiga. So I've got normal Amiga games, and I've also got CD32 games. Well, let's have a look at the CD32 version of Speedball 2, how that runs. Now, obviously with the sort of Amiga, you really need to make sure you have all your BIOS and Kickstart files in the correct folders, otherwise it will not work. I've got some other older videos that contain this, and the same sort of way they work is exactly the same for the Gameforce CHI. You see that it obviously doesn't actually fill the screen. You can change this in the RetroArch options if you want to, and sort of save the sort of style that you change it to. But it plays exceptionally well. I've no complaints here about this. So just a quick look we've got in television and how these older systems work. And again, I think you need to make sure you have all the right sort of files for some of these systems to work. This is the sort of Astro Smash. Let's see, it looks really good. It does look like the screen is stretched slightly to me, but could be just imagining it. But excellent game and works particularly well on here. Let's have a look. Oh, PC Engine. Let's have a quick look at that. So this is Paris All Stars, which is obviously Bubble Bobble 3 if you like. It played more like, I think, a mixture between Rainbow Islands and Bubble Bobble. Absolutely terrific game art. I do like this game lots. It's a cutesy, simple game to sort of get myself stuck into. So, Nintendo. So let's have a quick look at Super Contra. NES games will work generally fine as well. I've rarely had any issues playing these types of games on this, and I think a lot of these devices are really meant for this type of thing. Oh, it didn't last long there, did it? Let's have another quick look at another game here. So this is a relatively new game called Flea. It's coming on the Indie Heroes cart on Arcade. Quite a cool little game. I think playing it on these handheld devices, this style of game is definitely better than blowing it up on your big TV. This is one of these games that you just want to drop into every now and again. Remember, sort of, you can save your state by holding the hotkey in R1. You can up and down the sound, but again, this doesn't seem to work with every emulator or every sort of style. At Dreamcast, it would not work at all. And again, I can't help thinking that there's a slightly washed out feeling to the graphics. Not meaning this game, I just mean in general across every game I've played so far. Nothing majorly wrong, but I've seen other devices play these and it's slightly more colourful. Don't know whether there's something in the settings that I need to sort of adjust. I couldn't actually see anything that was sort of relative to that. Yeah, definitely recommend this game, guys, if you've never played this game before. Very addictive, fun. Yeah, it can get frustrating, definitely, but it's all in the challenge, isn't it? So move on to Super Nintendo. I do like all the sounds that play in the background. You can turn that on and off. We've got sort of LED and Turrican. Let's have a look at Turrican. That's Super Turrican to give it its better title. Fantastic little game. Obviously it does have Metroid sort of vibes onto it, but it's still a great game in its own right. So what have we got left? So Nintendo 64, one of these harder to emulate devices. That is a bit hit and miss, but let's have a look at Super Mario 64. Now I did have problems depending which emulator I've used. One of the emulators, I can't remember what one, but it was just stuttering all over the place. I think I found the sweet spot and the right one to use. You can hear there's a slight break-up in the sort of graphics a little bit. I did up the resolution to 640 by 480, and sometimes it might push it a little bit too hard and it's not used to it. So you may need to sort of mess about with that. You see there's a little bit of break-up here and there, so really it's a tie-off of where you want to have the graphics to look a little bit nicer and sharper, or have it a little bit less, a little bit more blurry. You see, sort of when you're in the game, it plays not too bad at all. I've seen better, for sure, I've definitely seen better, but it isn't bad. So one of the issues I actually found with this game is that similar to the Super Console X Pro, is the control. So the analog stick wasn't sort of working, so you have to go into, see the quick menu, and then you go to controls, port 1 controls, and then you change one of these. I think one of these was left analog, so I had that analog to digital type was none, and then it sort of fixed it out. and was fine. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Because remember, you've got all these RetroArch sort of settings to mess about with. You can see it looks actually okay. And you obviously can only use the analog stick here to sort of control. There's a little bit of slowdown, and I've definitely had mixed results depending on which emulator I've used. So you may need to experiment. And it looks okay, it plays alright. A little teeny bit of slowdown, frame rate's not perfect. Okay, it sounds a bit iffy. So sort of give you an idea, the sort of game settings. Let's check the emulator it's actually running. So if we look at Nintendo 64, for example, I've changed this to, here are all your options. You've got 3 other options. Now, you may have to experiment. Sometimes it runs better or worse depending which one you choose. Sort of give you an idea. Go into the RetroArch, you can change the sort of resolution settings. Which one is it again? Options. Yeah, so if you go into there, you can see you can change the resolution to maybe up or down. If you put it down to 320 to 240, you may get better performance rather than the sort of better resolution. So it's really up to you what you want to see. I found that the graphics were a little bit blurry. So it's obviously a tie-off which you'd prefer to see. So there is actually, I'm pretty sure there is a rumble feature in this device. I guess you probably need to sort of change the settings for it to be activated. So you can see that I've got some control issues and a lot of slowdown playing this. And button mapping is all over the place. So you can see this is practically unplayable. So this is probably the thing that's you need to be wary of. That not all games are going to play well. Some are going to be absolutely terrible and some will play fine. It's all about experimentation, but I guess for Dreamcast N64 it's not the greatest. I wouldn't really recommend it for that. Let's have a look at Game Boy Advance. See, it actually plays really well for Game Boy Advance. So guys, this is a Thomas Wave, and we're going to have a look at Dolphin Blue, but this is maybe just to prove that this device really can't handle some of these sort of harder to emulate platforms. It's a cool little game, but I've not really played many devices that actually play this excellent. Most devices really struggle to play. It generally sounds okay so far. But once you start getting to the gameplay, it starts to stutter a little bit, as you can hear. It gets to a point where it's just horrible and unplayable. I think there's just so much going on in the background that it's struggling to sort of play it. You can just about play the game, but you can see the slowdown's horrific, and it sounds absolutely awful. So I'm not sure I'd recommend trying to play this game at all, but just for example purposes, that's what we've got. And I think that's really about it, guys. I mean, there's other games to play, so let's have a look at some of the ports. For example, we've got sort of a Outrun game here, and see how this actually runs. I think it's going to have to come down to what you are looking for in your retro handheld. If you're looking for PSP and the like, I would recommend going for PS Vita. If you're looking for Dreamcast and N64, then there's other devices that are slightly better, like the Odroid Go Super or the RG351P. But if you're really looking for maybe the 8-bit, 16-bit sort of games to play, maybe even the PlayStation games, this device is actually pretty good. There's nothing majorly wrong with it at all. I've been pretty impressed with it. I just think the colours look a little bit washed out. It looks okay and generally plays quite well. This outrun port is particularly good. I think it would be good if there was a sort of colour option to sort of change about, but it kind of reminds me of the PS Vita, where it has a slightly less saturated sort of screen to it than some of the other devices that are out there. So guys, my final thoughts on this is a little bit of a mixed bag. I mean, the colour's obviously absolutely strange, but it sticks out. It's nothing awful. The button, it's a bit plasticky, but for general, the games actually play really well. I do like the setup and how it works. Obviously, Dreamcast and N64, just forget it. Don't even bother trying with that. But all the other games play really decently well. But yeah, I'd recommend it if you're just looking for a general handheld device. But if you're not comfortable with adding your own ROMs and sort of flashing your own sort of memory card, then you may want to look at the other devices that include things like that already included in the device. So if not, and you want to mess about, this is a really decent handheld to sort of use for 8-bit and 16-bit games and PlayStation games. Yeah, but overall it's not bad at all. If you're interested in buying, I'll have a link in the description of where to buy it, and maybe you could get a discount code if you join the Retro Gaming Revival Facebook group, and they offer a 10% discount if you go into their group. I'll leave a link in the description for that. And overall, thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you again next time.